Hello, chatters. Hello, hello, hello. Happy Wednesday. How are we doing? Ortil, granola, Saren, and glacial, paper jewels. And do you prefer Google or do you prefer Docky? Either way, hello. Lyndon, hello to you as well. So today we are going to continue our beetle identification journey, and I think it's going to be a little bit short today because we only have 3 families left in Cleroidea. Oh, Noomba Nation. Register the got attacked by 1,000 fire ants. Ooh, rough. I'm sorry. So we only have 3 families in Cleroidea, so it's a much smaller subfamily than, or superfamily, than Tenebrianoidea was. And I also just have fewer of the families because a lot of these that I am missing over here in this box are kind of new. Uh Arrow, you had Carlton host your work merger? That's kind of crazy. Did you ask him about bugs? Tell him about my Twitch stream? These are the important things. Um so a lot of Claroidea, like Thanoclarity and Prionocerity, are groups that don't occur in the US or are only like one species in the US that I just haven't gotten the chance to get my hands on yet. So it's only been one, two, three. We only have 6 families that we will have gone over in this group. But this is then the end of this drawer. So we're moving on from drawer 2 to drawer 3. I do also have an update if you guys remember the Christmas seaweed adventure. It's been about a month now. So I think that the Berlazy funnel where we have the seaweed in the little filter, I think it's probably done now. Somebody was like, surely there's nothing left in it after like 2.5 weeks. Um, we got some new stuff out of it since then. But I am looking forward to getting this 2-liter soda bottle off my desk. So we're going to go through these 3 little families, and then we will go through the stuff in the bottle. And then that'll make up pre-chat chats tonight. I don't want to start a full new drawer this time. I need to get my skirtoids in order for next week. But I will also say now, and it will bear repeating, there will be a special stream this Sunday. It is a bit of an anniversary stream, not a Twitch anniversary stream. And you are going to meet someone very special to me. So, Sunday, probably like 1 p.m. Eastern ish, maybe a little bit later. You'll have to see, Granola. You'll have to tune in and see. Um, I'll post about it. I'll make an announcement, but I'll tease it there for now. All right, let's get started with our first group here. This is the family Brogacinidae, and these are known as bark gnawing beetles. And unlike some of these other groups, we have pretty good characters for them. These past few, we've been like, well, these are pretty small. Hunty, the big spider. It is an original from 1908. It's some German designer that did big educational posters like that. So that thing is probably like 6 feet tall and like 5 feet wide. Um, that's a great question and an even crazier story. One of the janitorial staff at my last institution saved it from a dumpster. They were cleaning out a lab on main campus, and this guy was also cleaning our insect collection area off the main campus. And so we were there late one night when he got there, and he was like, "Hey, do you guys want this?" And he's brought supplies and some other kind of eh stuff over before. We're like, "Oh yeah, we'll take a look at it." And he unrolls it, and like as it's unrolling, my jaw is just also unrolling with it. It's like, um, and yeah, he said it was getting thrown out, and this designer, I can go read it if you would really like me to, but they made a bunch of these. They have plants, they've got other insects, they've got some butterfly stuff. There's no cool beetle ones, or else I was thinking about trying to buy a beetle one. They've got mammals and fish and lizards and snakes and all kinds of other goodies. Um, but yeah, it's an original. It's not a reprint, which also means it's a little bit expensive. So not only were they throwing out this like phenomenal piece of art, they were also throwing out like roughly $1,500. So I was super grateful that I was able to save it, but this is actually the first time that I've had it hung up in the 7 years that I've had it. 6 I'm sorry, I have to say the funny number, but in the 6 or 7 years that I have had it. Um it's just so big that I never had anywhere else that I could like hang it up. I didn't have a spare open wall, or if I did, I was worried about sun damage on it. I know this older ink and stuff doesn't tend to fade as much, and it was up in a classroom for who knows how many years or decades before I found it. Um, but yes, it is an old original German print of this thing. One more thing before we switch it to scope cam. I'm not going anywhere, but I finally got this set up. My mic turns off when I go to that screen. I think I wanted that, but I can't go talk about the BRB screen with uh with the mic off. I put that up in case, we have to panic switch scenes or whatever, but yeah, so we got that set up and we are still working on the starting soon screen. It will be an homage to the green sticky note, but it will be a distinct improvement on the green sticky note. So, yes, that exists now, and it's all set up on the Stream Deck, so I can hit the button and head over that way. Let's switch you over here. Hello, Momtomology. Look, you've got your 6-month badge. He's got the earwig. Nice. Very, very nice. Okay, so this, like I said, the family Troglodytidae, these are known as bark gnawing beetles to differentiate them from all of the other variants of bark beetles that exist. So this is kind of a this is like a typical individual for this group. This is the genus in the US that has the most species in it. And so uh if you encounter a Troglodytid like by the numbers, it's probably this one. Um, but this is not the one that I tend to find the most often, if that makes sense. Just the places that I have been collecting or that I have collected, these are not the most common. I actually tend to find some of the more interesting ones a little bit more frequently, which is, good for me. So these are uh they have a lateral carina around the pronotum, which is the pronotum, as we are well aware, is this little neck area, this little shield behind the head. And if we turn this and look at the side, this is also very flat. If you can imagine being a bark beetle, it helps you be flat to get under tree bark. But right here, you see this little rim right here? That little rim is what we call the lateral, which means off to the side, and carina, which is like a ridge. Um, you can have a carina in many different places, but in this group, the pronotum always kind of comes together at an edge like that. Um, the way I've always thought about it, which is kind of silly, is like if you're putting pie dough or like trying to seal a dumpling, it comes together with that little point where there's like two distinct pieces that come together. So that's the lateral carina in this group, and there are quite a few body plans in this group. The other character that I really want to show you for this group because it's incredibly obvious, which we cannot say about all of the other characters, will probably be best seen on one of the other species that we have here. So let's table that one for now, and then bring out probably what I imagine will be everybody's favorite from today, simply because you are all very distracted by shiny colors. So this is Temnoshyla, and this is the Troglodytid that I tend to find most often. This was the first species of Troglodytid, or the first genus of Troglodytid that I ever found. Um, I was in Florida and I was getting it for one of my insect ID classes, and you can imagine for something that's known as a bark gnawing beetle, they've got some pretty strong jaws. So it's not this individual. This is not the very first one that I ever found. But I certainly got bit. nice thick mandibles with some pretty sharp teeth on them. So, um, I was actually out looking for aquatic insects when I found my first one. We had the aquatic net, we were dipping in the pond, and there was like a gazebo sort of thing, like a pavilion that we had all of our stuff sitting at. And we had set down one of our headlamps to just like sit with the gear as we were getting ready to pack up. And I guess for whatever reason, the light from the headlamp was enough to attract the insect in. And so I just see this big, bright green, shiny thing crawling around on the table. And I was like, oh, gotta get that one. So I picked it up. I have it in my hand and I'm like digging in my pocket for a vial. And this thing is just like chewing on the palm of my hand. So, bark gnawing beetle certainly fits. And this one also has that really nice lateral carina. So you can see that top and bottom piece kind of comes together and folds in together, like I said, sort of like a dumpling edge. But the other consistent thing for this group is that the trochantin is visible. We haven't talked about oh, Rebel, hello. Today I found out ants and termites are not only not the same family, they aren't even the same order. Can you explain that? Yes, we can get there. Let me pull some stuff up and we can derail since I said this was going to be a short one. Come on. Termite guys. That's termites are yeah, yeah, Rebel. That was actually a big thing. So that only happened in like 2012, I think. Um, which was after I had already started learning entomology. And so they were like, "Oh yeah, these guys say that, but we're not really sure how well it holds up yet." Turns out super true. We are definitely full on that is how it is now. Answer during chat chats. I think this would be easier if I have access with uh showing images. So we're just gonna do it now. Okay. So this is an ant. This is in the order Hymenoptera, and that is the order that includes ants, bees, and wasps. And so one of the characteristic things for ants, bees, and wasps is that they have this little constriction here right in front of the abdomen called the petiole. So image. But you can see on all of these, there's like a very skinny waist that goes between kind of the big bubble butt area and all the legs. And so that's characteristic of all Hymenoptera, so all ants, bees, and wasps. But something specific about ants, stingers. Oh, metric. Yeah. Wait, can y'all not hear me? Can you hear me? You can hear. Okay, why is that? Don't know what this means. Well, that's a. We'll deal with that later, I suppose. Uh, weird. Oh, it's going on both. Okay. I had moved a setting and I couldn't see anything. Um, I derailed my own thought. Snatched waste. Yes. Okay, great. So ants, bees, and wasps have a snatched waist. Ants have dorsal nodes on the petiole. So if you look at any of these pictures, so like this one for instance, on that skinny area between the back pair of legs, because remember, even though this is an ant now and we've talked a lot about beetle anatomy, the legs and wings are always attached to the thorax. Everything behind the leg is going to be abdomen. So you have the head up here. The ant's pronotum is not nearly as shieldy as a beetle's is. So that's this spot right here. And you know that that's the pronotum because it is above where the first pair of legs is. Then this is thorax, and you have this skinny bit before the abdomen. On this ant, you can see there are two dorsal nodes. On this drawing of an ant, you can see that there's this big hump here. If only we had live ants that we could look at. They go too fast. We wouldn't really be able. But ants are known for having that dorsal node on the petiole. And they also have geniculate antennae. So if you look here, this ant, even this is a drawing, but this first antennal segment is very, very, very long. And then it bends at 90 degrees and has a bunch of smaller segments. And again, regardless of the ant, you can see that. So one very long segment, and then they're bent out here, but there's then lots of little segments going. Termites, on the other hand, look more like this. They are sausagey, meaning that there's no snatched waist here. That this is just very, very large, kind of all the way back. And termite antenna, this is a very bad drawing of it, honestly. But termites have what we call submoniliform antennae, which means that their antennae sort of look like a string of beads. Like this. This is cone-headed termite. This is a weird guy. But you can see how each one of these antennal segments is very small and kind of like string of beef. Yeah. Beads. And there's no snatching going on. This is a helpful graphic, even though this is from a pest control company and I hate giving them kudos. Um, if you have winged ants, Hymenoptera, hymen means membrane and ptera means wing. So they have this pair of membranous wings that are hooked together by these little clasps that kind of go like this that are called hamuli. And so you can tell really that like a flying ant looks very, very similar to a wasp because it has that pinched waist. It has these big membranous wings that hook together when they're in flight so they can flap one wing and basically get both wings on that side to go with it. Termites used to, before they got absorbed into Flatodia, which is the cockroach order, they used to be in this order called Isoptera. Iso means same, and Terra means wing. So here on the termite, the wings are uh, of equal length and they look about the same. So with flighted individuals, it's pretty easy. But most of the time, when you're seeing ants and termites uh, kind of in the wild, you aren't going to be seeing the flighted individuals. So the wing characters are not very helpful. The antennae are always going to be good, and the waist is going to be good like 99% of the time. Because as with all things insect, there are always exceptions, and in ants, the exceptions usually come in the males because the whole colony is going to be female. Their whole social structure is built around the one queen. So, male ants, their only thing is that they're mating. That is like all of what their job is. And so, because of that, there are some male ants that look real weird. This is Dorylus. This is a driver ant. And the males or the adults here are called sausage flies a lot of the time because they have this really big sausagey abdomen. But if you look right here, that is the pedial. It's not nearly as constricted as in others, but it's there and it has this singular rounded dorsal node. You will also notice that the antennae don't look quite the same. It still has that long first segment, but it's much shorter compared to um, one of the female ants. So, like I said, the waist thing and the antennae work like 99.9% of all cases, but with all things in insects, there are always exceptions. Um, but yeah, they are not closely related really at all. Termites are hemimetabolists, which means that they only go through 3 life stages. So there's an egg, there is a little termite nymph, and then there is adult termite. Ants, which you've seen with Calypso and with ants in general, go through a 4 life stage cycle where it's the egg, it is the larva, which can't really do anything on its own. It gets taken care of by other members of the colony. The pupa, and then the adult. So an ant life cycle is exactly the same as like a butterfly life cycle. And that division between things that go through the 3 segment and the 4 segment life cycle, um, that is a major, major, major split within the evolutionary history of insects. Um, Polyrachus, that's what. Wanted to bring this one up. These things are from Southeast Asia. These are called fishhook ants. Because the dorsal node on them is this giant hook structure. And so people will take these ants and use them to catch bait. They'll use them like actually as fish hooks because these are pretty big for ants. Picture of verify. What do you mean? I guess we're not looking at ants. Don't accessory, yeah, basically. But yeah, you can see the big hooks there. Pretty cool. They kind of look similar to earwigs to me. Are they related in any way? Which which thing, Paper Jewel? I mean, they're not. You're not catching uh trout on them or anything, but this. I'm trying to see what size. I'm trying to see what size scale bar these are. Okay, so what do you mean? Expensive ass PC can't display. um, I think this is a website problem more than an Evan hardware problem. Um, Vic, hello, hello. Looking at termites. Okay, Paper Jewels, we'll get back in just a second. Um, so this is a 2 mil scale bar. And so if you take that, this ant is probably like close to a centimeter. And so you're not, like I said, you're not catching record breaking fish on this, but you could catch smaller fish that you could then use to put on reel line to catch bigger fish. But you'd be surprised at the stability of the insect body. Um, this is turning into ant talk versus what's supposed to be beetle. What's supposed to be beetle talk. That's fine. This is Eceton. These are like the army ants, and so these are the big, super enlarged mandibles here. And something that you can do with these that's super fun and exciting is if you're ever in the tropics and you need stitches, you can just take these ants and get them to bite on either side of the cut. And their giant hooked mandibles like that will hook your skin and pull it back together. And then you pop the head off of the ant. I've never done this. I've just heard that this is how this goes. And you can stitch with these. They're like staples more so than stitches. But as the head dries, it's just like an insect specimen where the exoskeleton, so the stitches or the mandibles in this instance, they're going to stay tough for a while. So you can leave them in until whatever it is healed or until whatever you get to an actual medical facility where you're not using ants for um ants for stitches. But it is possible. And so in addition to the big mandibles, I know Metric you were talking about, is it sterile? I mean probably not. It's an ant. You were asking about stings versus bites. And so there are stingless ants that a lot of the time the thing that they do is just bite you. But ants are Hymenoptera, so they have a stinger in the females, which is a modified egg laying tube. And because ant workers are never going to be laying eggs, only the queen lays eggs, um, their ovipositors are modified specifically for stinging. And so, like, Paraponera clavata, this is the bullet ant, and they are one of the most powerful insect sting. You can see here on this photo, that is a stinger going back here. And so this is a 5 millimeter scale bar. So two of these is going to be a centimeter, and then four of those is going to be 2 centimeters, which is about an inch. So this ant is probably like 3/4 of an inch long. And they have this insanely powerful sting. The real hucksters that'll get you. Um, Lyndon was here earlier, and she said she got bitten by a bunch of fire ants earlier. Fun fact: she got bitten and then stung. So fire ants, they will bite you with their mandibles to make sure they have a nice, good grip, and then they will sting you. So they're going to be holding up here with the mandibles and then stinging that little piece that they have bitten. So she was not only bitten by fire ants, she was stung by fire ants as well. And so, yeah, it depends completely on the ant if it is a bite or if it's a sting. He's got the angry face. Yeah. So those are, if you follow, what would happen here. This long antennal piece lays right back above the eye. So those are antennal grooves. And not every ant will have that either. We could and probably should do a whole stream on ants because ants are sick. And, we've talked a lot about them with Calypso, but I did work in an ant lab for 2 years, and ant morphology and like just the different shapes of ants is insane. We'll do one more. We'll do one more ant before we get back to beetles. Um, what do I want? I want Basset. He's got it. This was like the first ant that I. Excellent. This is Dastan armigerum. This is a trap jaw ant from South America. And so it's got these giant head lobes, and I always liked it because its head looked like a heart to me. But when they're out wandering around, they have these big jaws that will. All we get. They basically hold them out at 90-degree angles, and then these hairs in here act very similarly to a Venus flytrap, where if you activate those hairs in the mandibles, they just go and grab really, really fast. And so this is in the vein of trapjaw ants. There are multiple species of trapjaw ants, and things like that. But this is one of, if not my favorite ant to exist. Um, just because it was like one of the first cool tropical ones that I ever saw, but like it's a pretty solid. It's gonna be embarrassing if I don't. That pop. Uh, these are U.S. I mean, they're all over the place, but we do have them in the United States. These are like micro trap jaw ants, but they're really weirdly textured and a lot of time blind like this. And so this is like a whole colony that could live like probably under the square footing of like a quarter. These are very, very, very small colonies, and they like keep they cap out at a certain size. So they're pretty small, but like really, really distinct morphology, which I think is just super, super cool. Like the big, totally. So that's ants. That is our ant derail. Rebel, do you feel okay about that? Feel okay about the difference between ants and termites now? Yeah, yeah, not a problem. And then mm, Paper Jules asked about earwigs. Termites and earwigs are kind of closely related. Termites and earwigs are a lot closer than termites and ants. So earwigs are also um hemimetabolous, which means they go through the egg larva. No, 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 no. They go through the egg nymph adult stage. How close? This is the one that we usually use in. I don't. I've lost. There we go. So termites and cockroaches come out here. Never mind. Okay, we're good. Um, Termites and cockroaches come out here, and you can see that they share this common ancestor right here. Dylan Kaz, thank you for the follow. Welcome in. I was in fact just thinking. uh, this node right here is the split, and you can see that there is uh, Blattodia up here, which are the termites, and this group down here, which is Isoptera, and the way that Apple following it is but thank you as well. Um, the termites come out within cockroaches, and so the way that these work is things split at these different nodes, and that's kind of how you read a tree. So like this one here, node 36, is the thing where you split the two major lineages of Hemiptera. But so your Dermaptera, your earwigs are down here, and they're a lot closer to things like Orthoptera, so they're a lot closer to um the orthopteroids, so they're a lot closer to grasshoppers and crickets than they are down here with the. But yeah, so you can see Dermaptera here. These things kind of split off a little bit. Um, I can definitely see where you were coming from. Paper Jules. They do share some of that like compactness. You can see the distinct segments down the back because there's not really wings covering it. And some of the earwigs do have at least semi beaded antennae. Uh I link this. Sure. But I do have like this guy Let's swap back to the microscope. This is an earwig, and among other things, you like earwigs. Me too. They're my little pet project at work. Obviously, I have to do a lot within the beetles, but I also took over curating our earwigs because I like them a lot. But this is an earwig, and you can see how those antennal segments are a lot longer than on the termite. Um, that and of course the earwig specialty, which are those big armored, uh, the big tinctures here at the back. So termites are never going to have this. Termite defenses are all going to kind of be on the front end. They can have modified heads. Some of them can have big jaws and things like that, but earwig defenses and earwig like secondary structures are all going to be posterior to the butt. Okay, so Troglodytes. We are back to looking at our big green beetle here. And the last thing that I said before uh we dove over into other groups was that the trochanter of the leg was exposed. Now that is a new term. We've talked about leg segments before. There's the coxa, then you have the trochanter, and then you have the femur, the tibia, and then the very end is the tarsus. We've talked about the trochanter before, like in ground beetles, they have that big, the big kind of bean-shaped trochanter. On this guy, back legs are a little bit covered. Also a little bit covered. So the leg is coxa, trochanter, femur, tibia, tarsus, and that goes from attachment to the body to all the way away. So this piece here, get my pointer in here. This is the coxa. There is a little tiny piece right here. That is the trochanter, and then this long piece is the femur. If we grab a bigger beetle, it'll be easier to see this. Let me reach into my bag of tricks. And so on this one, I feel like you that to head, shoulders, we could workshop that. Somebody, oh god, was it Formgoon? Somebody had said something about that of like general insect anatomy. Because they did head, thorax, abdomen, abdomen. And I thought that was fun. And you could definitely riff off of that, but I think the insect leg segments are a bit too wordy. So this shiny piece here that's getting most of the glare right now, tapping it right now with the pin, that is the coxa. This little piece that just goes from here to here is the trochanter. Then you have this big long piece that goes off screen right now, which is the femur. The trochantin is a different structure. It's a different thing, and most of the time, well, I don't know if I should say that. In a lot of beetles, the trochantin is concealed, meaning you can't see it. So, in order to show you what this structure looks like, you need to have one of the select beetle families where the trochantin is exposed. And so you could be looking and looking and looking for it, like on that ground beetle. You would never see a trochantin because they're always internal. The trochant is in where you can't see it. That is remarkably close to what I am going to show you, Casual. So going back to the trogocidid, if we look at the front leg, this is a bad angle. Okay. So seeing the trochanter is pretty hard from here. But if we look up at the base of the coxa, so do we all see this little extra divide that's happening right here? There's like the round piece that's kind of directly under me, and then there is a hard vertical line and a hard horizontal line kind of up in the corner. Like an armpit. Kind of. So the trochantin is a typically internal structure that mounts the coxa to the rest of the body. The way that I remember where the trochantin is that the trochantin is inside the coxal cavity. So you have the coxa and you have this like area around it that contains the coxa. That is the because it's the front leg, the procoxal cavity. Within that cavity, you have the coxa itself, and then the trochantin is in that cavity as well. That's what I said, casual. You were pretty close on like the way that I remember it. Um, and typically, or again, shouldn't say typically. A lot of the time, this is something that you're not able to see externally, and so you're looking for this structure. Um, and yeah, so sometimes they're like, oh, protrochantin exposed or protrochantin hidden. You could be trying to key out this beetle, and if you didn't know what a protrochantin was, you could be looking for something that is not visible. And so this is helpful on troglodytes because this is like we haven't looked at the other one yet, so kind of ignore that. But this one right here under my fingers is a relatively large beetle. At least in the grand scheme of things. But if we go back to the little troglodytid that we were looking at before, this is the first specimen that we looked at tonight. It's a bit harder to see, but actually really well developed in this one. So this is as far as I can zoom. But right here is this like extra piece inside that coxal cavity. So that is the protrochantin. And so these remaining three Cleroid groups have an exposed trochantin, which means you would be able to see that little extra bit on the leg. Maybe didn't do enough beauty shots of this guy. Mean green bark gnawing machine. Ooh, here. And then lastly, this is a cool species. This is Cletus, which does not look very similar to the other things that we have looked at so far. Don't love that. Um, this is what it looks like. Not smooth. Definitely not. So this is quite bumpy and also has explanate seedy. So the hairs come out and then they kind of get wide. Instead of just being like a skinny hair, it comes out and it widens apically. Very much like the first one, though, it also lives under tree bark and so is quite flat. But compared to the other two, this would you would have a hard time probably placing this in the same group as the big shiny green one that we were just looking. So if we zoom in, and I will warn you if you are not a whole person, you're what trypophobia, is that the scared of holes thing? I would maybe not look now. But this guy has some really deep punctures that are filled with seedy holes. Y'all are. So this one I think is just really interesting because it is so different than the others in the family. He also debris cloaks a little bit. So do you see all that muck and stuff on the head? That is often very finely attached dirt that is like stuck on to some of these big hairs that kind of show up and balloon out. But if we flip it underneath, it's rusting. Yeah, I can actually very much see that. But underneath it is just as punctured. You can see sort of the hairs going along the outside. He kind of velcros on debris. Yes, exactly. You got some real nice detail under here. But this is a very cool species. The other ones, the smooth ones, I very much tend to get at light. So we run the big black lights to attract stuff in, and those other groups will fly in and we'll get them there. This subfamily, so there's a group of these things worldwide. Um, these do not come to light because they are feeding on fungus beneath the tree bark. And so the only place that I have gotten these is at a really high elevation. And when I say high elevation, I mean like uh 9,200 feet. Mountaintop under the bark of a downed tree in Arizona. So I think no, it's actually the entire way. Both in our area, the sole member of the subfamily Cleroidea. So actually, there are only two species in this subfamily worldwide. We have both of them here in the US. Especially Velcro. Yes, yes, you can see how they're hooked and would be able to hold on to larger pieces. And so if you're pulling this, you flip a log and there's just little bits of dirt that were attached to the log, but then as you peeled it back, kind of got hooked down by those hairs. It would be a very effective form of camouflage because whatever is left would, in theory, look like just everything else that was left behind um, when you move that piece. So this was a very exciting find when I did find it. This one, I think, did I get this during COVID? I sure did. I spent a lot of time in the mountains during COVID because I was still able to be outside with people, um, far away from many other people. Yeah, this is from August 1st of 2020. Look for rocks in there. Yeah. It's always a pain getting learning about cool things that were in your area in hindsight, or that you were in the area of in hindsight. I feel that way with a lot of birds. Um, Actually, it wasn't that trip because I think it would have been the next one. Um, on the same trip that I got that one that we were just looking at, I got a fairly rare species of click beetle, also very high up on the mountain. And I brought it back and sent a picture of it to the guy who worked on that group, and he was like, "Oh, that's like the last species that we need for DNA work. Do you have any more specimens, or could you get us more specimens?" And I said, "Yeah, maybe." So I went back and I tried to get some more. And as I was driving up the mountain at it was probably 5:30 in the morning, 6 a.m. There was a guy who had this just like massive, like 2 foot long camera lens. He was like, "Oh, are you up here looking for the Quetzal?" And I said, "Nope. I'm on my way up to the very top to lay in some logs and look for a beetle that's about 3 millimeters long." And he was like, "Oh, uh, well, there's this really rare bird here that I'm trying to find. It's only like the you know third or fourth time it's been seen in Arizona, and I was not birding yet at the time, so I was like, I don't care about that." But I stopped to talk to the guy for a while, and eventually, like mid sentence, he just shoves his pair of binoculars in my chest and starts like click, 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 click. And it was this thing called an eared quetzal, which is a Mexican bird that like very, very, very occasionally just peeks up into the bottom of the US. And I looked at it, real pretty bird. Um, but I was like, okay, yeah, like I saw it, that's fine. Looking back on what I know now from how long I've been birding, yeah, serenade, yes. It was a picture of the bird. I don't have one that I took, but I will. Yeah, there we go. So it doesn't have like the super long fantastical tails that like the ear or the resplendent quetzal does. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was a male like this. That it was red and white and had the teal and everything. It was a very it was a cool bird. It was a very cool bird. But after it flew off, I was like, okay, thanks. I'm gonna go look for my beetle now. Um, but you can see like just how few records there are in the US. Uh it was flying like all up and down the mountain in this area right here. These are the ones that this is the one that I saw. It stuck around for quite a while. Um flying, yeah, basically all up and down this canyon here. But there are not many records in the US. I can't tell from this how many birds because these are sightings, not individuals, but it is not very many. And so now that I'm like very into birds, I I was there are people that have been birding for longer than I've been alive that have not seen that. And I kind of saw it just on accident driving up this mountain to go look for little beetles that live under tree bark. Um it's kind of a very funny situation now, but that's like the kind of bird that if I was still living in Phoenix, I would drive down to see, and to get to that site from where I was living is about 5 hours. So that's a commitment bird for sure, and I definitely would have gone to go get it again to like have representation of like I was actively knew what I was looking at and I could verify the ID and stuff now. I'm not one of those crazy people that like will fly places to go specifically see a bird. But if I was close enough, I would drive, and I living in Phoenix, that spot would have been close enough. Like beetles are also pretty rad. Yeah, I agree. I don't think that's very wrong. Right. Yeah, that's exactly what it's like, Dan. So this we're moving on now. New family. This is the family Meliridae, and these are the soft wing flower beetles. And I think these are always kind of fun. These also have that lateral carina, um, that edge of the pronotum that kind of comes together at that sharp edge. But unlike other things in this superfamily, which I don't think we've touched on this character yet, is that Melirids have a distinct clypeus. Are we going to be able to see that? Yes, we are. So we haven't, I don't think, talked about this in many groups yet, but the forehead between the eyes is called the frons, Frons. Then you have a piece below that that is called the clypeus, Clypeus. And there is a dividing line between them where those two pieces come together that is called the frontoclypeal suture. So a suture is any sort of meeting point between two pieces. It's called that because it is a meeting between the frons and the clypeus. And then you have the labrum, which is the first piece of the actual mouth part. So if you look here, and if I can keep my hand steady because I am propping this up manually, you can see that there's like two lines that go right on that orange piece, right under the antenna. Are we seeing what I'm putting down here? So there's the one line between like the blue part of the face and the start of the orange, and then there's a line that goes between those two pieces of the orange. If we're like vaguely in the air. But other things in this group, like if we go back to the Turgicid, it is going to not have a distinctly separated bronze and clypeus. So at the base there of that kind of split, you have the labrum, which is the first piece of the mouth part. But you notice that there's no dividing line between like the front of the head and that bottom section of the front of the head. So most things in Cleroidea, this superfamily that we've been looking at today, have fused clypeal sutures. Melirids are, well, this next one should have it as well because it got split from Melirids. But Melirids are one of the only ones that has that distinct clypeus. And then they also have conical oxy. Let's see. Yes, I think we. So again, remember the leg segments, it's oxa that attaches to the body, very small little thing called the trochanter, and then like femur, tibia, tarsus. Under kind of the shoulder area right now, there is a big piece that is sticking like straight down and out from the body. That's the that's the coxa. So that's the coxa of this group, and they're sticking out. They're produced, which means that they're sticking out, and they're conical. Let me see if this other specimen has a better view. Because this is kind of a. Oh, this is much better. Why didn't I just do this the first time? So those two pieces that are coming together now and sort of meeting at that little reddish intersection, those are where the legs attach to the body, and they're pointed downward, and they are, like I've said, conical. As opposed to the Trogocytid, where the coxa is basically completely flat against the chest, these ones are kind of pointed out and down, like away from its body. So the conical coxa, the distinct labrum, the lateral carina, so that pronotum kind of coming together on the edge, and then for some of the things in this group, not all of them, but some of them, particularly the males, except I think it's a female. And that's a female. Okay, so these are both female. We'll have to look at a male on Google here in a second. But do we see this fleshy piece right here? Where that pin is pointing. It looks sort of like it's maybe not supposed to be there. It sort of looks like debris or dust or something that's up under the wings. Yes. Yes. Google's the orange. That is actually an aversible chemical sac. So aversible means that it can fold in and then you can make it go bleh. It's sort of like a one of those like party kazoos where the tongue rolls out. It like folds into the body, but it can be filled with liquid to expand out, and it is used for uh, chemical production in some form or fashion. The males tend to have it a lot more than the females do. And the males will also have really modified antennae for the same thing. So this is a male. You can tell because his first few antennal segments are really highly modified. And then this is a good picture on the side. There's just like sort of this extra fleshy lobe under their elytra that they use to monitor and like produce the big fleshy. Not all of them do. I need to fill out my collection again in a second. Because there's this whole other subfamily called Dazatines, where these are on flowers in like the bajillion. And something like this does not conjure up immediately thoughts of being immediately related to this. And so I need to put one of these in my synoptic collection to, basically have this reference to show you guys and also show myself, in the future. But it's one of those things where I see them all the time. I have a bunch of them over, somewhere in the rest of the collection. But it's always one of those things where it's like, oh, those are so common. I have so many of them. I already have one in the synoptic. And I don't. So I'm going to have to go through and pick one out to put in here for representatives. But These are kind of fun because you get some fun patterns, but trying to identify them, even to genus, is absurdly difficult. There's a ton of undescribed species. There's a ton of things in different genera that look very similar to one another. And so this is a group that is quite troublesome to identify. But the Malachiines, these ones that have the very colorful bits, are quite a bit easier. And you can see here this like almost physogastric female, where she has this big kind of inflated abdomen. And from here, you can see how that little structure sticks out along the side. Some of them end up having like pretty big flaps. This one's pretty flat. You can see there's like all of this orange. Okay, where's that? You want to pet them? They are very cute. This is a pain in the butt family, and at least in terms of ID. But I do think they are quite cute with their little matchy patterns. And so the two that we have here are actually different species. So this one has the 4 spots, while this one over here has solid, like dark blue stripes. So even though those looked very similar next to one another, these are actually different species. Fashion dinosaur make cool cloak. I think there need to be more entomologist fashion designers. Not only people that make cool bug clothing, because there's not enough of that for my taste, but there's just so much inspiration that you can take from the color patterns and the forms within insects that it would be really, really sick. Okay. Our last family for tonight. And I don't know if we're. Yeah, we probably still can. We'll have time. So this guy, up until 2018, used to be a Melirid. So this used to be within the same family that we were just looking at, but it has since been moved out into its own group. Having a bit of a bad hair day, but this is the family Rhadalidae, Rhalidae. And this is one of only 2 members of this family, I think, in the US. 2. Maybe it is. Okay, 9 species in the US. Uh, this is Rhodalis testaceus, which is a fairly common desert thing. Um, the first time that I collected this, and I think this is probably the first one that I ever got, um, we were out in April looking for a fairly rare longhorn beetle. There was a group of us, I think there were 13 lights, so like 13 different light setups, and 9 entomologists out looking for this longhorn beetle because you only ever get them in like ones and twos, and it's an early season thing, which almost everyone that runs insect lights will probably run them during the same period of time, but you get different stuff if you run them in the winter or early, like in the spring, particularly in Arizona. So we were all out looking for this longhorn beetle, and I was also looking for Brachypsectra fulva, which we have not gotten to yet, but it's another one species in the US family that I hadn't collected, but I had seen pictures of the rare longhorn that had this other rare little beetle family like blurry in the back on the sheet. And so I was like, oh, that longhorn and that other thing are out at the same time. So I was looking, I didn't really care about the I it would have been nice, but there were 2 or 3 guys there that actually like really liked longhorn beetles. So even if we did find one, which we did end up finding one, I knew I wasn't going to get to keep it. I could have, but that would have been what the professionals call a real dick move. Because it's not a group that I study or work on in particular, so uh, other people extend that same courtesy to me. You know, they're not going to be head over heels going for ground beetles when I'm there. So everyone was focused on this longhorn beetle. I was casually looking for that to like show other people, but I was looking for a little small brown beetle. And this thing shows up. And this is not the small brown beetle that I was looking for, but this is a small brown beetle. And at the time that I was looking for this, or looking for the other one, this had maybe 6 months prior been elevated to a family status. So it was in the back of my mind as something that, like, possibly, because I knew it was a desert thing, but I had never seen one before, despite being in Arizona for like 2 years prior to this. Um, and so when it showed up, I was super excited. So you can see the similarities between this and the last family. It's hairy like the last one was, but this one does it a little bit more extreme with these very, very long hair. It has that kind of tucked head. It has that lateral ridge or that lateral carina. Um, Apical maxillary palpomere. Okay. Uh, this is still in the key with the old group, and so I was just trying to remember how to actually separate them. But this guy is going to have weird palps. So again, this used to be within the family we were just looking at. And so because of that, it shares some of those characteristics, which includes, for this one, having that distinct clypeus. There's 2 lines here right above those mouth parts. So there's the frontoclypeal suture and the suture that separates the clypeus from the labrum. So I was just explaining that that's a character for Melirids. This pretty recently used to be a Melirid, but got separated then based on uh, mostly DNA evidence, but also this weird palpomere that it's got going on. You guys see that? That apical palpomere, so the one furthest away from the body, the last segment of that maxillary palp, is very broad and triangular. Right here, this piece. And that is what currently separates it in the key from the other Melirids. But that's going to be now a thing that helps separate it out as a separate family. Or to sorry, paper jewels. Wednesdays always feel late for me. I mean, it's only 8 p.m. and we have to do chat chats in an hour. But I don't ever have the option to go to sleep early on because we have chat chats. So just knowing that I don't have that option, I always feel like I'm way tired. Even though I come home after trivia on Tuesday nights and just go right to bed. So I was in bed at like 10:30 last night. Not like up super. But some neat detailing here is the edge of the pronotum. The edge of this little shield here behind the head is what we call crenulate, or like scalloped almost. You can see that it's not a smooth edge. It's like it's got all these little bumps and ridges all around it. So that is what would separate this from the other genus in this family. So that's another helpful identifying character for this group. Not much to say about it. I've never seen the other ones. And because these are like low desert dwellers, these are in some of that like cartoonishly dry looking desert southwest. Um, I don't know if we know what these guys do. I don't know if we know what they're feeding on or anything like that, because a lot of that stuff just doesn't get super well documented. Okay. Um, we finished the subfamily or the superfamily. Yay! That was all of the Cleroids. There were only 6. So we started them last week, we finished them this week, which is a lot different than the Tenebrianoids, which took us a month and a half. So next week we are going to start moving into some of the aquatic or semi-aquatic things. The Skirtoid group is going to be there, so there's some fun stuff in there that I think you guys will appreciate. But for right now, we are going to switch gears just a bit and look at the beach samples again. So, for those of you that weren't here when this all started like a month ago, so it's very possible that there are new people here. On Christmas morning, I went down to look for some rare birds. And those rare birds also happen to be near a site where one of my like top hit list would love to find beetles were known to occur. And the beetles that I am looking for are about 2 millimeters long, so very, very small. And they are found on beaches with seaweed mats. And so I sat there sifting sand for about 2.5 hours, and I did not find any beetles. I didn't find any of the beetles that I was looking for. I did find some beetles. So then I had the brilliant idea to bring back some of the seaweed because the beetles that I'm looking for are predatory and they're probably going to be feeding on stuff that is inside of the seaweed or like just below the surface. So I scooped up 5 gallons of seaweed and brought them home and I floated them. So I put them in, I split up the thing into 2 buckets. Thank you, Jen. It is an antique, like early, like 1908, I think, German teaching poster. It's an original. We talked about it at the beginning of stream, but it's very big, like 6 feet tall. And I've just like never had a wall to put it on before, so excited to now have somewhere that I'm able to display it. And Donkus, hello, hello. So I brought this 5 gallon bucket of seaweed and sand home. And I split it then between 3 other buckets, filled them with water, and then just stirred. What that was doing was basically knocking all of the little beetles and stuff out of the sand and letting them float to the top. And after I let that settle for a bit, I skimmed everything off the top and I drained it into a little box on some paper towels. And then I put the seaweed into this contraption, the skimmings of that seaweed into this contraption, which is a 2-liter soda bottle that I cut in half. But more importantly, it's a Berlazy funnel, which means that it has been sitting here on the corner of my desk with this light over it since Christmas, or like since like the day or two after Christmas. And the way that Berlazy funnels work is that typically insects that are in soil or in substrate don't like to be out in the open. And so when there's the super bright light on top of them, they're all sitting in there going, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, I'm exposed, like I need to go hide. So they start crawling downwards. And as they keep crawling downwards in this contained space, there is mesh at the bottom that they will crawl through, and then they fall down the little funnel into a collecting vial. The other idea with Berlazy funnels is that you're putting them under a light, and so not only is it bright and they try to crawl down, it's also starting to dry things from the top down, and that typically works. The problem is, I just replaced that lamp bulb with an LED light, and they don't put off a lot of heat. So I think that's why it took so long, because I would typically only run this for about 2 weeks, and it's been double that. And somebody a couple of weeks ago, when we did this the first time, was like, oh, there's not going to be any more stuff in there. Hello, incorrect chatters. Look at all of the extra stuff that has come out. Need a hot light. Yes, they do, Jen. So the problem is I can't find any non-LED bulbs anymore. So I'm going to have to figure out the best way to source and deal with that. So I am going to, because I took the other vials of this stuff to work already, I'm just gonna, we'll take a quick look through here and see what we've got. I won't separate it out this time, but just take a peek at what we have here. Ooh, that's new. Sorry, I know. Heat lamp. That could work. That's usually the thing with like regular old incandescent bulbs is they got hot, but they weren't that hot. I think heat bulbs would potentially dry it too fast and stuff that would uh it would probably dry out too fast before it died. Or it would probably dry out too fast and die before it had the chance to crawl down. What's the long thing? Scorpion, sort of. So, right here in this pile, we have some mystery larvae. Candleworm is good intel, actually. I've not thought of that. Gonna be. Maybe I do need to move. Yeah, give me a second. I need to pour this out. I wasn't going to be able to point at anything because I was trying to show it to you just in the beaker. So I've now poured it out into a little dish so I can get my hands in there to actually point out the stuff that we're looking at. So everything has moved around now, but that's okay. So most of what came out this time are these larvae right here. And I do not know what these are. They don't have legs, so I am assuming that these are fly larvae. And I am also assuming that based off of their little ridiculous looking head. So this piece back here, this is going to be the eye. And immature insects have this structure that's called a stomata, not actually like a fully developed eye. So that's what that is. And then this has a hardened head capsule, which I think would put it in the Nematosera, so like the crane fly slash mosquito realm. But I have never seen fly larvae quite like this. And it's very possible that I've never seen fly larvae quite like this because it's quite possible that this is a family that's restricted to like the beach. So we're going to have to do some keying out of that, but I will certainly keep all of these larvae. There's a springtail back there, that little guy. We got most of those out, I think, during the first round. So there's not nearly as many in this stuff. This, however, is new. We did not get this last time. We did get a wasp, but this is a different family. So after talking to my hymenopterist at work, so the guy that works on wasps, the last one that we found is a diapriid, and there is no common name for that. It is just a weird little family. This is not a diapriid, but I don't know what it is. So, like I said, I'm going to take this uh, little mix of stuff in tomorrow and um, give stuff to other people. So hopefully he will be interested in this group and will also be able to tell us what it is. I'm hoping that this is a Celionid, and I hope that it's a Celionid because that's the group that he works on specifically. And he was very, very excited, at least to even look at the stuff that I had last time, because Celionids are occasionally parasitoids on stuff that are associated with beaches. So yes, he did like his last gift. It wasn't the group that he worked on, but he was still quite excited to get it. So hopefully we're batting a little bit better with these ones. Yeah, that doesn't feel like fuck with it. Yes. Um, he's fine. We don't have bad interactions. It's just it's not quite, we're not quite buddy buddy. So I need to keep bringing him weird wasps so he likes me more. We are wooing him with wasps. Okay, so that's exciting find number 1. There is another one of those wasps right here, and I think there are 3 or 4 in this whole sample. So there's a second one. Aha, this is what everyone was talking about. Good find, good find. I would die. Even aware, honestly. All right, Jen, here it is. So we had one of these last time. Now we have 2, at least that I've seen, and they are either different than the first one or just older in terms of like it was the other ones were immature and this one might be an adult. This is a pseudo scorpion. So it is a completely different order of arachnids than your normal scorpions, like tortellini and puppy for you alveus heads out there. Um, so this is as distantly related to, well, spiders are their own order, scorpions are their own order. These are as different from each other as the other groups are. So totally different arachnid group, not a scorpion that just lost its tail, but was named presumably after scorpions were, because why would you name something false scorpion if you didn't already know what scorpions were? So this is a different arachnid group, which is pretty neat. And they do some pretty interesting stuff that is non actual scorpion like. So first of all, the legs. There are 4 pairs of legs plus the claws. That is also true of regular scorpions. Most people, at least when I've seen that draw them, think that the claws on a scorpion are one of the pairs of legs. They're not. They are a modified mouth part called a pedipalp, and that is exactly what these are as well. So these are the little puncture claws are modified mouth parts that they then use to grab stuff and bring it to their. Ooh, that was a good angle. See if we can get in on that. That's some fun stuff. If you look right between the claws, focus right, you can see its little chelicerae. Vertic, hello. So those little pointy pieces right in the middle of the head are the actual mouth parts. And in this group, they sort of look like scissors. So there's like two pairs of them, and they kind of chew at stuff like this. And that's how they actually grind the food up and like get it to be small to go down into the stomach. Pedipalps, yes, sexy boxing gloves and spiders are pedipalps as well. Yes. Um, but in pseudoscorpions like this, instead of having venom in the tail like a regular scorpion does, or uh in the fangs like a spider does, I finished my adult beverage. Let me pour the glass. Thanks, dog. Um, Instead of having it like in fangs like the spiders or in the tail like a true scorpion, some, but not all, pseudoscorpions have little venom glands in their claws so that when they grab stuff, it's like auto injecting venom right away, which is a very, very cool system. Uh, it's Diet Coke, Rotic. Nothing, nothing particular. What is in my adult beverage? It was my Toad whiskey. Uh, I broke my previous glass that I liked to drink whiskey out of because I had the big ice cubes. So I just got this new one, and so of course I had to test it out. Um, I'll show you what I was sipping on. I bought it because it reminded me of Georgie. Natterjack. I can't use the Jaws one, Mom, because there's no room for Ice Cube. Because there's a shark in it. So yes, that was what I was drinking. But now it is just um anyway, Pseudoscorpion. Pretty neat find, and there are like two or three of them in here, which is pretty cool because we only had the one last time. But leaving it for so long obviously means that there was still new stuff coming out. And we got some stuff that was not here previously, so definitely needs to be left for this long if we're going to run something like this again. This is a cockroach nymph, which was not in here last time. So, again, good thing that we ran it for so long. In view here. Yes. Right, there we go. We have a pseudoscorpion coworker. Technically, yes. He doesn't like to do them because he's a mite guy. He's kind of like our miscellaneous arachnids person. Um, so he doesn't like to do pseudoscorpions, but he will if I ask nicely. So I'll ask nicely. I did say nymph. What's wrong with nymph? But yeah, so this one here, you can see another one of our fun roach or our fun wasps here on the right hand side, but this is the cockroach nymph right here. Don't ask me which cockroach species, because I have no idea. What else do we have? Okay, here's... Yeah, this will be our last little corner of goodies. About time to wrap it up anyway, so I can take my little bit of a break before chat chats. But this corner has some bangers. First, this little guy that's sticking to my pin right now. But that beetle here, this is Halocritus, which is a type of clown beetle. Uh, same family as my tattoo here. Usually not a group that I work on or super care about, but this is a species that is only known from Florida in a genus that is fairly rare to collect. I sent a picture of this from the first batch to the friend of mine who does work on this group. He was like, "Oh, where did you get that? I've tried a couple times in Florida to get that thing and I never have." And so I told him that I would send him some if I got more in the trap. And I think this is like the 55th one that we've pulled out of here. So it's almost certainly a collecting method thing, is that people weren't like rinsing and washing seaweed to get them. They were potentially just burlazying them or not using seaweed at all. But this is a fairly rare beetle. We only have like 10 or 12 of them in the collection at work, so uh very good find, and excited to have collected as many of them as I did, because now I have bartering chips for people that work on this group, and I'd be like, hey, I can send you this rare to stare at if you send me some of your good ground beetles. What's an average number for a work collection? That that changes drastically. There are some things that there's only one of. Like I looked at a ground beetle today that we only had one representative of, but I personally have like 7. So uh it varies a lot, but in a collection of 12.5 million specimens, only having like 10 of something is kind of low on the low end, considering we have some drawers that are filled with the same species. Uh Certainly curious. Thank you for the follow. Welcome in. Yeah, so that varies. Clear guy. That is another little springtail. So he's actually up above the beetle right now in the uh water column a bit. A little bit lighter. So yeah, that number changes quite a bit. And then these guys. 2 more pseudoscorpions. So these ones are pretty different than the one we were just looking at least in terms of arm structure, and they're way more sclerotized, meaning there's the head capsule there is a lot harder. But you can see on that back one, the little chelicerae again, the little kind of chewing things. Uh, in 25 minutes, Nicole, we're going to take a break here. These springtails are going to be or pseudoscorpions are the last things that we were going to take a look at here. And then I was going to take like a 15-20 minute break between this and regular chat. Run to the grocery store and return. Probably not. L. But you need to go to the store. You probably need supplies. We were just looking through random seaweed bugs. So we've got the beetle, we've got the pseudoscorpions, we've got all of the mystery fly larvae, we've got the cockroach, we've got our little wasps. So decent variety in here, again, of stuff that came out after that initial 2-week period. But I think we are going to retire this Berlazy funnel now. We're going to dump the seaweed out of this and then can refill it with some new stuff. If you guys like looking at mystery things that come out of dirt, we definitely can do some more of that. But for now, that is where we are going to leave it. We finished Cleroidea today, which is quite exciting. We looked at some stuff in this petri dish. We got derailed a little bit and talked about ants and termites. So lots going on. How big is my personal collection? Any idea how many specimens? I have been saying about 7,000, but I don't fully know. Certainly curious. So this stack of drawers back here, everything that has the orange tape on it is something that I have on loan. And these down here are empty drawers. But these mostly are full of things. So there's a lot of bugs here. How much knowledge do I have on dirt in my field of work? I took a soils class once in college and I didn't really like it. Understanding soil texture and stuff, not for me. And also they get you with like being outside and looking at dirt, but then it's just chemistry. It's just chemistry in disguise, and that's not cool. Chemistry is cool, not cool for me. So I have a lot more information on the stuff that lives in dirt than I do about actual dirt. But leaf litter, rotting wood, perhaps, more seaweed at some point from different beaches. There are just so many possibilities that we can run funnels with. And I have this is like the fun little desktop for a lazy funnel, but I also have one downstairs that is a 5-gallon bucket that sits on top of like a 12-inch automotive funnel. So this is good for doing small volume and like having one that we can actually have set up here on the desk. But we can also have a lot more material getting processed and have a lot more stuff. Oh, so you had an ad. Sorry, certainly curious. I was saying that this is all stuff on loan. This stuff is empty drawers, but all of the cabinetry that you saw is mostly full. So I would say probably around 7 to 10,000 specimens. But I actually have no idea. So that is where that is. Thank you all for being here and for asking such great questions. I am going to take a quick break here between now and regular chat chats. I'm sorry, Quokka, that you are just getting here at the end. But we are going to take a break. I will be back in 20 minutes as a disembodied voice over on Alveus Sanctuary. So I'm going to send y'all back over there, and you will hear from me in about 20 minutes. Thanks all for hanging out. Hope you learned a lot. Let me know if you have any questions in the bug cord, and I'm going to send you all over. Goodbye.